phenomenal youth group in the province of Manitoba. They do a lot of wonderful things, Prime Minister, and we should have, is it Vizlumin Cabrera?
Hello. Hi, Prime Minister. My name is Vizlumin Cabrera, and I'm the Director of Development for ANAK Inc. here in Winnipeg. We are a volunteer-run nonprofit organization established in 2006 to share, learn, and preserve Philippine-Canadian culture through the creation of resources, diversification of education, and providing mentorship opportunities for youth. During the pandemic, we've had to stop, regroup, and pivot our strategy on how we reach youth. We got creative and collaborated with organizations in Calgary to reach a wider audience of youth, as well as those in Winnipeg. Although these were great opportunities to learn and connect with Filipino-Canadian youth nationally, we were unable to continue our regular programming. Our mentorship program has come to an abrupt stop. We award 2 scholarships every year, and we were unable to present them to the youth on their graduation day or celebrate their achievements with the community. And most unfortunately, we were unable to go forward with plans for fundraising for a year. In the spring, we teamed up with other members of what is called the Kapit-Bisig Youth Network to create a national survey that might help us assess the needs of Filipino-Canadian youth during the COVID-19 pandemic. The survey launched in June, and in late August, we looked at the data collected. Of the youth who took the survey, 10.7% of them were from Manitoba. Many of the youth reported an increase in anxiety and depression, while their access to therapy was quite limited. Since that time, the case numbers of COVID-19 have dramatically increased in Manitoba, and code red restrictions, although necessary, have added additional factors to the mental state of our youth. In terms of employment and income, the data shows that most people who took the survey were very pleased with how the government was able to quickly give us financial support in the form of CERB. Numbers from the Employment Sector Roundtable Committee, which is run by the Immigration Partnership of Winnipeg, collected data that shows Filipinos experience higher job loss and greater reduction in hours than their white counterparts at the height of the lockdown. The Filipino community and the youth make up much of the working population in healthcare, hospitality, service, manufacturing, and education industries. Not only do the youth work in these industries, but they also have family members working in them as well, while also caring for our elders, many of whom live in our own homes. The heightened anxiety of risk for the most vulnerable in our community has taken a huge toll mentally. While many of our youth do not have the option of giving up their jobs, we do hope for more access to addressing our mental health needs while we stay on the front line of this pandemic to help the Canadian economy survive. Prime Minister Trudeau, I really only actually have one question. I know the federal government has provided support to the province of Manitoba in response to COVID-19. What assurances can you provide us constituents that will hold the province accountable for making sure your federal support is spent on what it is meant for? Things such as PPE and what was allocated for the safe reopening of schools. Thank you.
Excellent question. Prime Minister.
Thank you so much, Vizlumin, for your question. But also, let me just pause and say, I cannot speak to young people in this country in a pandemic, out of this pandemic, anytime without being inspired and so incredibly hopeful for the future. The initiatives you took, while, as you point out, youth were hit harder and racialized youth were hit harder than others in this pandemic, and still you got creative and you organized and you pulled things together and you had a very substantive and useful presentation for me here. It's one of those things that is constantly an inspiration to me, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for your leadership. I know it's been hard, but this is one of those things that, I think all of us are going to look back on the way so many people look back at the great events of the 20th century and the times of trial, and realize that this is a time when so many of us stepped up and helped out in our communities and started to shape a better world for the future. And your voice and the voice of all young people, not just in your community, but across the country, are going to be so important. And as is almost always the case with questions from young people, they're tough ones. That question on how we ensure, we sent over $25 billion to the provinces on things like testing and tracing and PPE and support for vulnerables and safe back to schools and medical systems and health systems and all sorts of things, because the provinces all said, we need money, this is costing us a lot. And we said, okay, that's fine. The federal government is the one who paid for the CERB, we paid for the business supports, we are the level of government that made sure that everything got going. So when the provinces said, yeah, but we need more help for these things, we said, okay, we give them. Now, a lot of people think of the federal government as being, the highest level of government, and then the provincial is answerable to the federal, and the municipal is answerable to the provincial. Well, the municipal is answerable to the provincial, but the provincial government isn't directly answerable to the federal government. The Constitution establishes that provincial control over healthcare and over education, for example, is their control. They don't have to send us receipts. They don't have to tell us how they're spending our federal health transfers. Of course, we try to work with them to make sure that there's transparency, but it is really difficult for the federal government to directly demand that in areas of provincial jurisdiction, like healthcare, like education, like managing a lockdown, that they have to give us answers. But the people they do have to give answers to are you, the citizens of Manitoba, the voters of Manitoba. And I think there are a lot of questions being asked, not by the federal government, because that's not our place, but by people in Manitoba about what the provincial government did, some of the things it did well, some of the things maybe it could have done better or quicker. So I think it's going to be really important that you continue to ask those questions of your provincial government. My job isn't to judge or to pick fights with people. I think everyone wants orders of government to work together, and we will do that. But I think there are real questions. One thing we did do, however, when we sent $2 billion to the provinces for safe back to school, as you brought up, we said, okay, we'll give you half right now, early September, so you can get that money into the schools to make it safer right away. And you don't need to tell us what you're going to do with it. Just go and do it. You could use it for ventilation. You could use it for cleaning supplies. You can use it to hire more teachers. You do what you need with it. But if you want the second half of that $1 billion, you need to send us a letter in December, so we're waiting for it, detailing what you did and what you're going to do with that next money that we send you. And those are letters that we're certainly going to be releasing to the public, so you guys can see whether or not they did it and what their plans are and whether they align with the next steps. So it's a careful balance in our federation, but I think a combination of people asking tough questions and us expecting answers, all of us, we'll make sure that people are being held to account.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vizlumin.
Thank you. And the final guest speaker is